Hey guys, as always, Mark here, and let's look at the 10 boss of Furi, the beat. Furi is a boss rush game where the main character motivation is to escape the prison. You play as the stranger with a simple goal you get from the voice of killing the jailers to set yourself free.
Kill the jailer. Fight for your freedom. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you'll be free.
Playing through the game, you get a chance to fight off all sorts of colorful characters with vastly different games mechanics. In many ways, the boss rush aspect of the game cut out the filler and put you up against new challenge every time you come across new bosses, and it really lets the game maker, the developer of Furi, to explore the multi-phase boss fight with different level of complexity in gameplay. It is no surprise then that I love this game and all the boss the game presented in my part. All of them are mechanically sound and serve the gameplay in a really interesting way. Now, those who watch my content know how much I like getting into mechanic of the game and do an in-depth analysis on video game on my channel. But today I want to do something just a little bit more different. I decided to explore what can be considered the weakest boss in the game in both the design and the difficulty of the boss fight itself, and how she is presented in a way that serves the overarching story of the game in a really meaningful way. In fact, I think Joseph Anderson summed it up best in his review of Furi itself when he mentioned about these characters. By the way, it's a great review of Furi that I really recommend you check out if you haven't already. And it's also spoiler heavy like this video is going to be, so I recommend you go play the game before you watch this video.
And another doesn't really count in my opinion. The beat, which is the final fight before those credits, is more of a story boss than the others. This is fine on its own since it fits the concept that there's very little meat to this battle. Part of the intended effect here is to make you feel like a monster when you truck your way through this last fight without much effort.
So, before we get into the fight against the beat itself, let's first set some context of what happened before entering this fight. The beast is the 10th boss of Furi. Technically she is the 9th boss you can fight, but story wise she is the 10th. Before you come across the beat, you had to overcome the 9th boss of the game, the Age, who's easily the toughest boss for new player. Now after overcoming the Age, even the voice is surprised by what you did, going as far as to say the Age is the toughest guardian in here.
Oh, incredible! Amazing! What I just saw here? It was magical. And he was probably the toughest one in.
This is interesting since it let the player know that they have overcome the toughest challenge the game has to offer. So just like after any boss fight, you walk through the boss gate, which brings you to a new level. The beat level is completely covered with white snow, which set a really good contrast to the overarching story coming to a conclusion in this level. The voice point out to you that the beat is one of the reasons he hated this place. He can't stand how they are willing to risk the life of a kid by making her a guardian.
It's guardians like her that make me hate this place. Why did they let her join? How many were they prepared to sacrifice?
Just like most exposition dialogue by the voice in this game, this gives you a sense of who the upcoming boss is, but at the same time it also let the player understand the voice feelings on little girl, which also ring true to his character as well, because we will later find out that the voice break you out, and the main reason he does that is just to hear his daughter laugh again. The voice went on to say that she is part of this, calling her an idealistic child and plain stupid. And to me, this showed the voice just trying to disconnect himself from the fact that he is sending you to kill a child.
Don't get me wrong, she's part of this. She's an overconfident, idealistic child who dreamed she could save the world. Let me be the last wave. I will stand when the rest have fallen. She's an amateur, short-sighted, plain stupid if you ask me. What a waste.
In this way, it helped him justify his action by presenting a picture of good and evil where he stood against the evil for your freedom. The voice also point out that there is something in there that can stop you for good.
And there's something in there that is meant to stop you for good.
The characterization of the voice, the innocent nature of the beat, and the motivation of the player throughout the game for the stranger pay off big time in this level. The overarching narrative of good versus evil, the fighting against the injustice of the jailer, and the fight for your freedom come to a perfect conclusion in this level. Before the fight starts, the voice ends the conversation with his famous repeated line, which gives the ongoing motive from the start of the game.
So, one last time, the jailer is the key. Kill her, and you will be free.
So, let's get to the fight itself. The first phase. The beat first opened with a statement that shows what she have been hearing about you, in a way presenting a statement without judging you in any particular way.
They said you were a monster.
She went on to point out the reason she can't let you leave.
To let you go out? That is a fate worse than death.
This first phase of the boss fight is kind of special because what the game does is it paints a character who is willing to point out a statement with little to no prejudice on the main characters for quite honestly the first time in the game. This is quite a drastic contrast to the first boss of the game, the Shane, who verbally abused you throughout the fight.
And now, you're nothing. I will keep on killing you. Again and again. I am your future. An eternity of slow, painful deaths.
Even your companion throughout the game, the voice, prejudges you. He even points out in one of the scenes that he is surprised when the stranger hesitated to execute the song.
I did not expect that. Not from you. I think I saw you hesitate after the last fight. You, of all people. Why would you ever hesitate? It made me think.
This really helped illustrate the kind of character the Beat is and the optimism she has, even to the stranger, even more so than the voice. In the second phase, after presenting a statement and a reason in the first phase, she went on to ask some questions that even the player might not have even asked up until this point.
Who are you really? Why are you here? Why are you doing this?
She also went on to present a statement about herself, who she is and why she is here.
I wanted to be here. Where else would I be? Here is where I can make a difference. Yes, I am paying the price for my people's freedom, but it's worth it.
In this second phase, she posed a question to the player as a stranger about their identity while reflecting on her own. This idea of one identity then gets explored further in the last phase of the fight.
I look at you and I don't understand. We're so alike.
In the final phase, the Beat hang on to her hope and push on with her belief that maybe you and her are not so different. Eventually, the Beat finally break down and have to admit to the statement she presented at the start of the fight that she tried her best to reason out of.
You are a monster!
This line sealed it for me.
You are a monster!
The first time I hear it, I know this game knows exactly what it's doing. I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a minute, just to point out why this line is so powerful. To do that, I think it is important to realize that in any good scene, the last line of any scene is the point of the scene itself. Now, I can try to explain this to you why that is the case, but I think I would present you with a little clip from lesson from the screenplay, which is going to explore this idea much better in a much shorter time capacity. And this was a video on Gone Girl, which I highly recommend you go and check it out as well.
The last line is the point of the scene. In Anatomy of Story by John Truby, a screenwriting book I highly recommend, he writes, "The beginning of the scene should frame what the whole scene is about. The scene should then funnel down to a single point, with the most important word or line of dialogue stated last." He uses an upside-down triangle to represent the idea.
So this same concept can actually be applied to the beat in this particular boss fight, in many ways constructing a narrative throughout the boss fight itself, similar to how you would when you construct a scene in a movie. You start with an open-ended statement worthy of discussion.
They said you were a monster. To let you go out? That is a fate worse than death. Who are you really? Why are you here? Why are you doing this?
And you end with the point.
You are a monster!
Now after delivering that point, the beat went on to activate a laser cannon machine of some sort, something that the voice alluded to before that would take you down for good. This laser cannon machine is the perfect punchline to the story for me. The fact that you can take a hit from the machine showcases how strong the stranger has truly become and how larger than life he has become. The game makes it abundantly clear that the beat is only weak to your eye because of how strong you have become. It becomes unmistakable at this moment for me that the final guardian in Furi actually is not the beat herself, but you, the stranger, the player, is the real final guardian of the game. This whole fight is not a fight against the beat, but the fight with your inner self, of who you are. It presented you a question of your morality for the first time in the game, without prejudging you for who you were, and let you decide for the first time who you wanted to be. But of course, you, the player, ignore all of that and throw it all away. This boss fight, in many ways, is actually an exploration of the player and the stranger characterization after the journey the game has taken you to. I know it sounds a little cliche to say something like this, but honestly, I think it is very much intentionally done by the developer. Actually, do you know the song that has been playing throughout this entire fight? It's actually called You Are the End by Wave Schaefer, directly addressing the player as you, the player, as the end. This entire fight was intentionally created to be the easiest fight in the game, not because the developer was lazy, nor is it because the boss fight itself was poorly designed. The beat was designed from the ground up to ask the player a simple question, one with drastic ramification of what the player would do next. A simple question of who you are. And if you think that I'm exaggerating this, here's the final fencing stand against the beat.
Stop! You can't go out there. Don't you understand? With you, our world withers and dies. You're the end. Fall back, please! You are a monster! It hurts! Not like this. Why?
Yes, you cannot die in this phase, because it's really never a fight against her after all.
Fall back, please! You are a monster!
Oh, and the music that's playing in the final fencing part of this fight is actually called a monster by Wave Shaper as well. And that's who you are.